Hey everybody, welcome to another Haas Talks Foss. I'm Matt Yankovic, the Haas here at Percona, head of open source strategy. I'm back with Sergey Pronin. Hey Sergey, how you doing
Hello.
today?
Hello, Matt. Fantastic. All good,
You,
thank you.
you will be happy to know that today, on this podcast, I've recorded another one earlier with a different Sergey. So this is a dual
Oh,
Sergey day for me.
lucky
So
day for you, right?
yes, so I'm going to end with you, Sergey, and I started with Sergey, so it's like a double dose of Sergeys today, which is awesome. But for those of you who have listened to Sergey talk before, this is his third appearance on the podcast because Sergey is doing all kinds of awesome work on what is one of the hottest topics in the tech space, which is Kubernetes and Kubernetes operators. And Sergey always has something interesting to say. And the big interesting thing that came out of Percona Live was the talk about our Postgres operator. And so I wanted to touch off with that. So if you haven't seen, Percona has already released operators for Mongo and PXE or MySQL, if you will. And now we are working on Postgres. And I heard that we're looking at an ETA in August for that. Is that correct,
Yep.
Sergey?
Yeah, correct, correct. So,
So,
yeah,
yeah, tell
go.
us about it.
Yeah, so for Postgres, as you mentioned, it was one of the missing pieces in our puzzle, right? So we have MySQL, we have Mongo, and we have Postgres as Percona company. We have distributions for MySQL, Mongo, and Postgres, right?
Yes.
And we also have operators for MySQL and Mongo, but we never had anything for Postgres. So definitely we wanted to add one. And the story was that we were thinking, okay, shall we start from scratch and write everything from scratch, or shall we fork some existing operator, or work with some other guys on upstream? And we decided to not to go with development from scratch because it would take enormous amount of time, and we chose Crunchy Data Operator as the base for our Percona operator. So now we forked it, and we are committing also our changes to the upstream to Crunchy, as they're also open source folks. And I'm pretty excited about that. Right now, during Percona Live, we released it as a technical preview, and it's going to be GA somewhere in August. And for us, what means GA, it's going to have the same look and feel as other operators that we have for MySQL and Mongo. So it will be a seamless experience.
So, Sergey, with Postgres, what are the unique challenges when developing that operator versus an operator for, let's say, PXE or Mongo?
Uh, I would not say there are some unique challenges, but uh, Postgres as well as MySQL, these are free all technologies which are not cloud native ready, which were never intended to run on Kubernetes. No one ever thought that, uh, okay, we need some to keep the state somewhere else, have some S3 buckets. No one ever thought about that. So there is obviously a challenge to make it work on Kubernetes. Um, the challenge is always the data on Kubernetes, right? Because you need to keep it, you need to make sure that you don't lose any transactions in the process, and yada yada yada. This is the biggest challenge on Kubernetes, not the database specifically, right? I would tell it like that. But for us, the big challenge would be that for distributions, for our Percona distribution for Postgres, we support multiple Postgres versions, and we need to do the same for our operator because we want to keep the parity. And this is the challenge for our team because some of the packages are outdated. We need to keep them updated. So it is the work of our build and release team, of our operators team, of our engineering team. So a lot of hands are involved, and it's a great effort. Um, but yeah, more or less, it is still the database, and you need to run it on Kubernetes somehow.
So, when we talk, from a Postgres feature perspective, are we approaching what the parity with what we've already got in the PXE and the Mongo operator?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, exactly. So, Crunchy Data Operator, which we're basing our operator on, is quite feature rich and it is
Okay.
production ready. So all the features that they have, we can already use in our operator. And on top of that, we're adding something from us like PMM integration, some customizations that we used to have. But more or less, the parity is there. And we're gonna get closer to it and make all our operators aligned. The biggest challenge, it's, well, not the biggest, but one of the challenges that we have is the UI. In operators world, UI is YAML manifest, which you specify to run the database on Kubernetes. And we have certain standards in Mongo operator, in MySQL operator, and the way how crunchy data is operator was structured is not how we envision it, and we need to change it. This is the number one challenge for us, because if we don't do this now, then later on this would be the breaking changes for our users and customers, and we don't want to do that. And so we're doing all this cosmetic changes in UI at the early stages.
Okay. Okay. And when we talk about like, the crunchy data operator, what features have we already added? Like, what are the gaps that we're trying to fill there?
Number one gap that was in crunchy data, and we had some users who complained about that, is that the container images that crunchy data uses in their operator, they are not free. They have their own development license, and this
Ah,
development license allows you to run it only in non-production environment. If you want to run on production, you need to purchase something from Crunchy, like support subscription, and then you can run it. And this is number one change. We're open source company, and we changed it right away. We added our Percona distribution for Postgres container images there instead, right? Another thing is the container images that Crunchy was using. They were based on some, I believe, on CentOS version, which is kind of dying now. And we're basing all our images on UBI, Red Hat Universal Base Image. And this also allows you to run the operator on OpenShift, which is important
oh,
for
okay.
enterprise
Okay. So
customers, right?
OpenShift support as well.
Yes. Also, we are adding Percona monitoring and management. And also, the interesting part with Crunchy, when we first started using it, was the part with end-to-end tests. And we kind of saw it recently. Crunchy Data released 4.7.0 version. And when we started the mergers and started the tests, we saw that recovery process is not working, point-in-time recovery, and broke completely. And we thought, okay, what's going on? So what we're doing and what we already have for MySQL and Mongo, we have feature reach, or I don't know how to say, a wide scope of end-to-end tests, which will automatically run for every pull request. And that is a lot of work for our quality assurance team, for our engineering team, and we want to make it right from the very beginning, so that we have certain standards of quality, and we want to keep them at that level for all operators that we have.
Okay. Now, let's go a little bit off of our specific operators for a second. Now, you mentioned, one of the challenges with MySQL and Postgres is they were never designed for that kind of cloud native architecture.
Yeah.
So we've seen this kind of rise of the new SQL databases, whether it's Cockroach, Yugabyte, TiDB. So there are quote unquote Postgres and MySQL compatible
Yes.
new SQL options out there. They're not always compatible from a 100%, which is typically one of the challenges that companies have moving to them, because it's a very different mindset when you shift over. Where do you see those going? What's the growth of those new SQL versus some of the operator things? So, it's more of a thought question than it is a technical one, but I'm interested to hear your take on that.
Well, first of all, I think all these projects, they appeared for some reason. right? Either the founder of this company was not happy with existing technology, or some big customer told the founder, hey, I need this feature in MySQL or some other database. So they are solving some problem that someone else has, right? But I believe that slowly, and I already saw it on some other MongoDB forks and some other databases, or kind of all the other technologies that have huge traction from community, they're gonna catch up on these features. Like if Postgres, it has enormous community, and if someone is interested to deliver the same feature that Yogabyte has, for example, they will do it. And it's easier for companies to move to Postgres than use Yogabyte because it's easier to find people who knows Postgres instead of finding people who work with Yogabyte, right? So I believe that more or less the big companies or big databases that are now at top five, they will slowly kill the ones that are appearing now, because they appearing because they solve someone's problem, but it's not big of a problem, and this can be solved in Postgres or other database. That's my way of thinking.
Well,
Probably
I mean,
some,
is it though? Like, I mean, this is an open discussion, so just I'm thinking as we talk here. I mean, but some of those architectural decisions on like how MySQL was architected or how Postgres was architected, those are not easy changes
correct.
to catch up with some of that distributed system. It's a completely different back end, and I mean, I think that's where you know there's some compelling work being done. Um, you know, contrast and compare. I don't know. I don't know. Do you think that it is feasible for like the Postgres community to re-architect Postgres in a way that makes it a distributed database?
I think it is. I
Okay.
think it's feasible. It is hard, but with Postgres is not a good example, I think, because Postgres, it's super modular. They have a lot of packages, and you just plug
Yeah.
in some new package, and it just works. With MySQL, it's much harder, but it's still possible. And I don't know if MySQL or Oracle is going to be doing that, if they're interested in that, or they have their share of customers already.
So, yeah, I mean, I mean, and you see other projects that are coming up trying to solve the clustering and the
Yeah,
distributed,
yeah.
systems as well. VTest, for instance, is a good example. You've got quite a movement to try and solve this scalability issue. So it's definitely an interesting space. Now, when we talk about scalability and availability, one of the critical things in a lot of these systems is the ability to run geographically dispersed clusters or failover between multiple data centers. Now, I know on the roadmap for our operators is that capability. So, in other words, you're running in a data center in the U.S. and the data center in the U.S. goes down, and then all of a sudden, automatically, you fail over to a data center in Europe. Tell us about that feature and that functionality, and when we can expect to see some of that.
Yeah, okay. This is a good one. So the
I only
the
ask good questions, Sergey. You should know that.
the goal for us, for operators, is to run Percona software on Kubernetes, Percona distributions on Kubernetes, right? And our users, they can do a lot of stuff on VMs, on bare metal servers with our databases. And when they go into operator space, they say, okay, how can I do it in the Kubernetes? How can I do it with operators? And a feature like replicating the data between different data centers is not there yet in our operators, and we're working on that. The idea is simple. You have two distant data centers, one in East Coast, one on West Coast, and you want to set up the replication between them so that you have disaster recovery in place and you can execute your disaster recovery protocol. And to do that with operators, we need to ensure that we can configure it through the operator on both ends, on master or on main and replica, right? That is what we want to do for our MySQL operator for PXE and for Mongo. For Mongo, it's easier. For Mongo, it's just adding a node into the replica set. But it's more complex on the code level, so in the operator. It's coming in the next release for PXE and in the next release for MongoDB. But in reality, what excites me more in this feature is not the disaster recovery capabilities which enterprises want so badly. But for me, what is more important is that it allows the users to migrate from the bare metal databases where they run in their data centers to Kubernetes seamlessly. They can just set up the replication and the data just flows into the database on Kubernetes. And it's awesome because there is a lot of pushback from DBAs, from SREs to run the data on Kubernetes because they say, okay, it does not provide the same performance levels, does not have the same isolation, I don't like it, but we can make it work, right? And that is why this feature, this disaster recovery or multi-cluster database deployment with operators, it allows you to seamlessly migrate to Kubernetes. And then you can try it out. You can point some applications to read from the database on Kubernetes, and you will see that its performance, it's great, everything is awesome. So that is why I'm excited about it more than disaster recovery.
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, I think that, it is a problem that many people are trying to solve. And so I think it helps, especially the enterprises who are looking to have that portability. It's almost like the failover between availability zones that you get in most cloud providers, right?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's really the key critical thing.
No, between the availability zones, it kind of already works, but between the regions, this is what is missing right now.
You're right. Yeah, it's the regions versus availability zones.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, Sergey, I know you were at Percona Live, and you did do a couple of these talks. So you had a couple talks where you talked extensively about our operators and, kind of the benefits and, for each of the ones that we have available.
Yeah.
Those are all available online now. So if anybody is interested to learn more about those operators, you can head over to YouTube or Percona's website, and we have links to those. So you can hear Sergey go in depth on either of the topics, if you are interested.
Yeah, you can hear talking me more.
What was that?
You can hear talking me more.
Yes, we can hear all kinds of more Sergeyisms.
Yeah.
But Sergey, I appreciate you sitting down with me for a few minutes today to chat with me about what's going on in the operator space. Appreciate your insights into both the Postgres operator and the HA across regions. Both are very welcome news.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you very much, and we hope to chat with you in the future.
If you invite, I'm always eager to join you in your talks.
Yes.
Thank you, Matt.
All right, thanks, Sergey. Wow, what a great episode that was. We really appreciate you coming and checking it out. We hope that you love open source as much as we do. If you like this video, go ahead and subscribe to us on the YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And of course, tune in to next week's episode. We really appreciate you coming and talking open source with us.